We have risen from the ashes to school the masses. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Scholars Wrestling Show. I'm your man behind a microphone and your Scholars of Wrestling World Heavyweight Champion, Scholar Jeff. To my upper right, it seems, is the other man behind the microphone and the current reigning and defending Scholars of Wrestling Party Champion, Scholar Tarek. How's it going tonight, sir?
Well, all is well. As far as I can see, I'm chilling in my shitty basement and talking wrestling with some fine gentlemen. I am now officially one of those losers who just talk shit about wrestling in their basement. Yeah, not in
Yeah,
my
I mean,
mother's basement, but my
yeah,
basement.
yeah. Who talks about wrestling in their basement? Really? I mean, come on, who does that? Isn't
Who
that
does what?
right, person to my right, Scholar Brian? How's it
Well,
going tonight, sir?
I was doing fine, and then I had to listen to what you tried to say at the beginning of the show. What was that? Because that was not English. But that's it.
Ay, ay, ay.
The-
Can't we all just
but
get along?
no,
we?
what's on that?
No,
This
we're
is
we're just very
kumbaya.
good at bashing each other.
Oh,
This
ain't that the
this is
truth?
no kumbaya. Just because we're not in the same room doesn't mean I'm still not going to take the piss. That's it.
Oh, brother. Well, speaking of taking the piss, it seems like the world of wrestling and the world of health has taken the piss out of a lot of things in the wrestling world this week. There's a lot to talk about, so let's just get right into it. Kicking things off with a little we like to call backstage news.
Backstage news.
Yes, we shall go ahead and peek behind, not this curtain behind me, but the curtain, and check in on this very big.
Backstage news.
News.
Everyone's sick, man.
Yes. This is an absolute bonkers week. We were like we were talking before we went on the air today. We were originally supposed to record this episode yesterday, and it was very fortunate that we didn't because some extra news broke just this morning, I believe. Apparently, Roman Reigns is now out of WrestleMania this year due to his compromised immune system from his leukemia. So, yeah,
He's
as of right now, he's out. Big dog's
he's
out.
the big one, but there were like 10 or the other people announced this morning that makes me feel like, listen, all right, I understand that we want entertainment. Entertainment's a good thing, but this just reinforces in my head that they should have postponed WrestleMania
But
because
then again,
it starts with Roman Reigns. We already knew about Rey Mysterio and Dana Brooke. Okay, Rey Mysterio had contact with Andrade, who was also announced today that he's out of WrestleMania. Now that those two are out, don't be surprised if we hear in the coming days that Angel Garza and Humberto Carrillo are also out. We have word about The Miz being out. Okay. Asuka, Cesaro,
I actually
and
just heard
Buddy
about
Murphy.
Asuka and Cesaro like 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, Asuka, Cesaro, and Buddy Murphy, or don't call him Buddy, it's Murphy now. But they're all out. Okay, at this point, the card's a shit show. All right, and let's face it. Okay, I know where you're going with this. Okay, they've already announced the replacement for Roman Reigns in the Bill Goldberg match, and it's Braun Strowman. And I can't think of a match that I want to see less than Braun Strowman versus Goldberg for the title. And Braun Strowman's going to win, and it's one of those like, why? He just lost to Sami fucking Zayn. And all of a sudden he's got
dropped the belt to Sami Zayn.
I don't want to hear it. he lost to Sami Zayn, and you're gonna make me believe that he could beat Goldberg. No. Okay, this is at this point, okay, quite honestly for me, they should have shut down WrestleMania immediately. They should have.
Okay,
Nothing
to counteract your argument with the whole he lost the title to Sami Zayn. Hey, if they can put the WWE Championship on Jinder Mahal, then putting the Universal Championship on Braun Strowman is actually the more believable storyline aspect on this one.
It's the more believable, sure, but it's like,
oh, it's a good story. It's a
how?
good white story. Like, yeah, the question is, what are they going to do?
No, at
To
that
set
point,
up this.
when Braun
just-
Strowman when Braun Strowman wins, I can honestly say, from the bottom of my heart, that I'm gonna be rooting for Roman Reigns when it comes down to the Roman Reigns versus Braun Strowman part. Like, I've been done with Braun Strowman for the longest time now, and if this is how he gets the Universal title, no, sir.
Yes,
No.
by default, the two best words in the English language. Default.
At that point, just have vacate would be the vacant would be the better champion at this point. I'm like,
there was an idea pitched on Reddit that I actually am kind of okay with if they did do this. Have the first night main event John Cena versus Bray Wyatt, and the winner faces Goldberg for the Universal title on night 2.
I would love that, and then have the Fiend.
That would be cool.
And then have the Fiend regain the title that way, and have that be a nice boost up for him. But
yeah,
I you know, at this point, yeah, I do wish they postponed WrestleMania as well. It's just the show really is, lack of a better term, falling apart because of this whole pandemic that's going on. And in my personal opinion, ever since when the pandemic really started to take shape here in the United States, Roman should have just been sent home immediately.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, I was shocked that he actually showed up at SmackDown last week, because I'm like, dude, you just beat leukemia. You want to talk about being in a weakened state? Okay, you might not feel it right now, but you just finished like a whole set of chemo, and even though it's been like 8 months, all right, your body still ain't right. You're not 100%, and this will take you down. Same with Daniel Bryan, because I don't know exactly what he has, but his wife Brie Bella said that he has an immunodeficiency, some kind of disease. So it's like, you shouldn't even be in that Intercontinental title match. You and Roman should have gone off as soon as Florida shut down.
Mm-hmm.
They should have gone off and been like, no. I'm glad that Roman thought of his health in this situation. I'm glad, but it's like, look, guys, it's like, yeah, the show must go on, but there's 10 of you dropping like flies right now.
Now, in all defense, in all clarity, very few of these names have actually been totally confirmed, because right now I've been also hearing some really conflicting reports that not every name that was put forth out there is someone who's actually not going to be present at WrestleMania.
The only one that I've heard that was said and then debunked was Edge. The only one that came out, that was one of the names that came out earlier today, Edge, and Meltzer debunked that. It's like, everybody else Okay, well, first of all, I didn't think Murphy, Asuka, or Cesaro were going to get on the show to begin with
Hmm.
in a match. I didn't think they were going to get on. So, yeah, okay. The Miz, now that we know what we know from watching tonight's show, had a big part in WrestleMania.
Mm.
But he showed up to tonight's show, to tonight's taping, actually sick.
Mm.
Like, so it's one of those people were pissed off at him for it. So
And I
yeah,
heard that was actually one of the big factors that Roman's like, "Yep, I'm out." The fact
Now,
that
but
Miz showed up for work ill.
it's one thing for those three names, but you have Dana Brooke. Well, I
oh
might not like
yeah.
her and all that, but it's like she's in your women's title match. She was in your women's title match. Rey Mysterio was going to have a big part in the show. He's been throwing hands with Andrade, who was announced that he's out. Okay, and they've been teamed up with Angel Garza and Humberto Carrillo. Okay, at this point, it's like have the matches that you've already taped, throw them on a show, okay, and have the actual WrestleMania when everything comes down. Because as of right now, this card is bullshit.
I have to admit, though, I am very morbidly curious just to see, like, let's face it, for better or for worse, there's never gonna be another WrestleMania quite like this in recorded history. We are bearing witness to history here, for better or for worse, and on that merit alone, I can't wait to see what they do with this. I'm
um,
still excited.
yeah, I'm more knowing what we now know. I'm more worried at this point than anything else. Like
Hmm.
I'm not excited. I'm worried because it's like as soon as I see these guys step into a ring, I'm like, all right, who's going in? At this point, it's all like, who's going into quarantine after this? That's all I'm thinking about.
I'm just now more in the line of I'm not excited, I'm not worried, I'm just curious. I'm now curious on what this final card is going to be. Because I'm just thinking for our prediction show next week, we're just going to pick matches and just out of the blue the next day, it's going to be completely different.
Oh man, it's gonna be the Wild West out there.
I know that they taped everything already. They probably taped Strowman versus Goldberg tonight. But I mean, the taping of WrestleMania was supposed to be the 25th and the 26th.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But it's I guess some of the matches weren't able to be had yet, like Goldberg Roman probably weren't able to be held because of schedule.
Main event on night one, it's going to be King Corbin versus Elias.
Yes.
Yeah,
Hey.
we're gonna close off the first night with that garbage.
Yeah. And main event night two, whoever decides to show up that night.
I will say though, I feel like the biggest casualty in this whole situation is Drew McIntyre.
Oh
He
yeah.
pretty much just had his, simply put, he had his big WrestleMania moment completely taken away from him.
It's like at this point, it's like, does it even do him any good to win here?
I wouldn't quite go that far.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far either. I mean, it's still like if he still wins, he gets a good clean victory over Brock Lesnar. So that's still a big deal. It's just the sad part of it is that the feel of just thousands of people completely losing their shit when he hits like 3 claymores to take down the Beast and finally get that pin and finally get that one cheating moment, finally becoming the chosen one.
And
It's to the fulfilling Mania moment. That part is gone, but just at least he will be in the history books as WWE champion, being one of those people that pinned Brock Lesnar clean.
But here's the deal, okay? I'm now that you don't have those screaming people, and now that you don't have that defining WrestleMania moment, whatever, does WWE go through with it, or do they wait until they can actually get that moment? That's why I'm like,
here's their moment. Here's their moment. They're gonna have the match the next night on Raw. They're just gonna get a complete big compilation of live reactions on the internet. 1, 2, 3, and you're just gonna see clip after clip of people watching WrestleMania lose the complete shit over and make this a whole big social media thing. Work with what they got, and just.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking, Pinky?
Still have that grand music, but live reaction for the Scholars of Wrestling to get us on the WWE television.
Yes.
Through this, like this, through this.
Hey, it could happen.
Well, it could happen.
Like we'll be how they did it with NXT with Matt Riddle. They had the guys from Cultaholic, or for Keith Lee, not Matt Riddle. It's like, don't you forget about Keith. We got to try and do something just to get us on. If they do that, I mean, it's too genius for WWE to actually do something like that.
I will say this though, the thing that I'm looking forward to the most now coming out of this, okay, is after what happened tonight on SmackDown. Did you guys watch?
What specifically?
I'm not gonna lie, I did not. I still have to watch it.
The match between Bray Wyatt and the Fiend.
Oh yeah.
The match.
Oh yeah! What a great match that was.
The match between the Fiend and John Cena is now legit called a Firefly Funhouse match.
Yes.
It's happening.
It was big rumors that Bray pitched the idea of having John Cena face both the Firefly Funhouse Bray and the Fiend.
Well,
in one, and I'm like, okay, it's Bray that's pitching this idea. If him and John get the big creative freedom for this one, I actually see this being on like Hardy Compound, Impact Wrestling type level.
Yeah, that's the first reaction I heard from so many other people, where if they still have access to Jeremy Borash, the guy who did so much of the work on the Hardy Compound and Broken Math segments, if they still have access to him, then
I think he's
this
still
could
there.
be fantastic.
I believe he's still there.
Yeah, he's still there.
Yeah, if they take their time with this and they let Jeremy Borash and Bray Wyatt take control of this thing and make it their own, this could be a spectacle that we are going to remember for years. I'm going to put it right now. This is probably going to be match of the night.
I with the way that it looks right now, I don't know how it can't be.
Hey, it may not be the most technically sound match, but in terms of just sheer spectacle and making use of the circumstances and making the best of it, I think this is the fertile ground to make something absolutely legendary. And I think with Bray being in the position that he's in, with the amount of clout that he's got and creative freedom, I think this is the perfect stage for something that's once in a lifetime.
WrestleMania tagline, once in a lifetime.
Which means they're going to do it again next year.
Damn exactly. My thoughts exactly.
Hey, the world can always use more Bray Wyatt. But then again, before we move on to the rest of this week in wrestling, I have to take a moment here to discuss what I personally consider to be one of the greatest creative endeavors in professional wrestling related media today, and that is the Dark Side of the Ring documentary series. Uh, as we were talking about earlier, the second season of Dark Side of the Ring has just begun, and of course, it is the two-part series on the Chris Benoit scandal. Uh,
Or the Chris
you've
Benoit tragedy.
Tragedy, scandal, any number of words apply here. I know we've all seen it, both parts, and honestly, I have to say it was probably not only is it one of the most well-made wrestling documentaries in recent memory, but it was also the most comprehensive story being told of all aspects of what happened with Chris Benoit and the aftermath, which I haven't seen it covered to this extreme extent. But let me just turn it over to you guys. Initial reactions to Benoit parts 1 and 2 from Dark Side of the Ring.
You go
Quite,
first, Brian.
quite honestly. Okay, first of all, made me depressed, which it was supposed to. So, points for that. You did your job there. Second of all, it let me know that Chris Jericho is exactly who I thought he was. Like, awesome guy. Did every and all that. But third of all, okay, I quite honestly didn't get any new information here.
Mm.
I was like, it really, like, yeah, they went comprehensive and in depth into it, but I'm like, basic gist of it was I already knew all this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those, like, yeah, it was a good watch. Okay, but it's also one of those things where it's like we didn't teach me anything new. And it's one of it didn't give me the enjoyability, and it didn't give me what it gave you based on how you opened this segment. It didn't give me what it gave you. It's like I already knew all this. Yeah, it went full in depth, and yeah, it was nice to get David Benoit's thoughts on things. But other than that, it's like I already knew all this. I don't know why it needed to be two parts. It's like I already knew all this. It's all good. So that's it.
Fool, what did you think?
To an extent, I can side with Brian on this one. I will definitely say, it definitely got me emotional, which, yeah, it was the idea. And I think it didn't give me any new information other than just the realization that it was Christopher Nowitzki who pitched the idea of looking at his brain. At that point, I'm just like, oh wow, yeah, oh, good call. Definitely did not know that. And basically once I finished watching the entire documentary, my initial reaction was my respect for Chris Jericho went up through the roof. Beyond that, through the stars, throughout the entire galaxy, just to see David and Nancy Benoit's sister Sandra, like he was able to get them back together for what was the time span that they didn't talk?
Years, like over
Yeah,
a decade,
it was
definitely.
years. I think they said 13 years
Yeah,
since
definitely
they
over a decade.
And just seeing him talk to both of them, looks like it was after a show. And at that point, I'm just like, this man, Chris Jericho, is quite possibly one of one of the greatest, not wrestlers, people who ever existed in just basically all of social media, all of media in general, because they needed to, like, their voices needed to be heard, especially since they were big fact, like, since a lot of people like went to them and they basically didn't have anyone else to talk to until Chris brought them together. And now, like, they're both wrestling fans again. Uh, they're much closer now than they probably most likely have ever been. And it was just a heartbreaking moment, just pretty much having to go through what we felt when it initially happened. Yeah, it was a very well put documentary. It definitely made me emotional, but I will say the point that got me hardest the most was just all the stuff they were talking about when Eddie Guerrero passed.
Yeah.
Just like I really actually didn't know that Eddie died in Chavo's arms. I just thought he found him dead, but just the fact that Chavo went into detail that he was still there, and then he watched him basically leave in his arms, and I'm like, that is just heartbreaking. Because the fact that he was alive, who knows how long he was on that bathroom floor. So it's just one of those factors. Just going, yeah, I learned more about what stuff with Eddie than I did with Chris Benoit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
That part actually, like, I was actually watching it while I was at work, because
It's like that's a
at
dark
that point,
side of
like, I actually had to pause it because I actually was bursting into tears just thinking about what Chavo had to go through, and then David saying that only Chavo and who was it else that he said? It was Chavo and Dean Malenko, he said?
No, I think it was Chavo and Jericho were the only two who reached out to him.
Yeah, I'm just wow. Just
yeah,
But
I think
have they done a dark side of the ring for Eddie?
No, they have not yet.
I don't think so.
That is one that I would like to see, because I think that you can get a lot more out of the dark side of the ring with Eddie Guerrero than you could have with Chris Benoit, because it's like we basically we basically knew what led him to do what he did. So it's like you can get a lot out of Dark Side of the Ring with Chris Benoit, but just imagine one with Eddie Guerrero.
Well, I honestly beg to differ with you there, and I'll explain why. In terms of the facts, you're absolutely right when you say that. Let's be real. Most of the facts, the vast majority of them, regarding Chris Benoit's physical and mental state and everything that happened before and after, you're absolutely right. Most of the simple facts were already discussed, were already known publicly. However, just watching the entire thing, just all in one fell stretch, which is what I did, it didn't read, the whole thing didn't watch like a regular typical documentary in terms of conveying the facts. This one was about two things: telling a more complete version, nuanced version of the story, and two, which is why I think it resonated with me a lot more than it probably did with the two of you, was it almost seemed cathartic for so many of the people involved, especially when the tail end revolved so much around, especially right at the start. Jericho even said, "I'm not trying to celebrate the life of a murderer. This is for me. This is." It honestly felt like part of the grieving process, not just for the people who experienced it firsthand after it, like the David Benoits, but also for the fan base too, myself included. Uh, let me open with this. I'm guessing you both remember what the immediate reaction was once the news broke that Chris Benoit and his family were dead. Once the greater truth came out of Chris Benoit killing his family, what was the kind of reaction that you saw amongst the fan base? And I mean, like
Anger.
Well,
friends of ours.
I can tell you legit what happened, how I took it. He used to be my favorite.
Mhm.
Like he was my email address. My email address was Benoit Rules
Mm.
2000 at yahoo.com. Okay, that was my email address. Uh, the best way I could put it is as soon as I learned that he's the cause of his wife and son's death, okay, my email address changed immediately. That's
Mm.
that uh, it's like I can now separate the two. Like I can watch his matches and be like, these are still awesome. Okay, but it's like if you ask me about Chris Benoit, like I won't answer the question.
Mm.
It's that like it's one of those, such a letdown, such a, just
Heartbreak.
like I understand, like his mind was so messed up and all that, but it's just like I looked up to this guy like a lot,
Mm.
and it's just like he is, it's that don't look up, people that you look up to tend to let you down in ways that sometimes you can't describe how badly they do. And
Mm.
Chris Benoit was the main one for me.
Mm.
It's just lucky that the next one that I jumped to was above and beyond my expectations, because my favorite now is Jericho.
Fool, what about you? What kind of reactions did you see? You said anger a moment ago?
And for the fan base, yeah, anger. Just for me initially, once the true details of it came out, I even said it to Brian. I was heartbroken because I was seconded. He was one of my he wasn't but he was one of my favorite wrestlers to watch because I just know his matches are just going to be absolute phenomena. Whoever who was wrestling with, because the man he was a master of the art. And
Mm-hmm.
one big factor that cemented with me after watching the documentary is just the differences, because they looked at the WrestleMania 20 celebration. There's Eddie, who is praised, and then you have Chris, who was now disdained, what's the word,
Vilified,
Bla-
vilified,
blacklisted.
Blacklisted.
blacklisted. Thank you. It really, like, people were like, I would agree with Jim Ross, like he was a great wrestler, but he should never ever be put in the Hall of Fame. Any Hall of Fame, really.
Mm-hmm.
It just, all it is just heartbreak, and just seeing, pretty much having to relive how the media had, as they put it, had a ball, because they just wanted to find some reason to just hate on not just WWE but professional wrestling in general. And this one was just basically a nice big piece of cake that they can feast on.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, it's just, I wouldn't fully say he almost killed professional wrestling, because
Mm.
no one can really,
It
but
definitely took a hit though.
it
It took a
definitely
big
put a
hit.
black spot in the history. And I don't know, I don't remember who said it. I think it was Vicky who said it in the documentary, that or Chavo, that like if you would have told him that he would have left this mark in professional wrestling history, he would be heartbroken.
Mm-hmm. And that was a very
So,
good way to put it. I thought that was a very good point.
yeah.
But and
Was it
speaking
Chavo
of
who said it?
that was, I think it was Chavo who said that. Uh,
Mm.
but then again, like you were talking about in terms of fan reaction, I've heard all that you, I heard all and saw all that you have said and more. I've seen the anger. I've also seen denial, who people who just could not believe that he could do such a thing. Just like how, why? Just like brain short circuit does not compute. But ultimately, I've noticed that there was a whole lot of just flat out raw pain. Uh, and it's a kind of pain that you really, because of how he was blacklisted and just no one talked about Benoit and no one could, for good reason, mind you,
Took
talk
away
about
one of the
Benoit.
greatest WrestleMania moments.
And that's
Mm.
honestly how it affected me personally. Like for
Like for
me,
many, like that was the one. That was the moment.
well, for me personally, it takes on another dimension when going to WrestleMania 20, seeing it live with my dad was one of the best memories I had with my dad. It was the
Mhm.
last time that we ever went to go see a live wrestling together. And now, especially after it happened, I always felt like that good memory of me with my dad has been tainted in some way. And it took on a very special meaning now after my dad passed away 2 years prior. So, and because of how Benoit was handled, like we're talking about with Eddie, the way his life story went, yeah, he had his troubles with drugs and alcohol and relapsing and all that. But by the time he passed away, he had become the world champion. He had kicked the habit. There was, and we also, most importantly here, we had the full on tribute to Eddie. We all got to, we the fans got to say our goodbyes. We got to grieve. So that is, we got that closure with Eddie. Because of how things ended with Benoit, again, shout it out if say give me an amen if you agree. But with Benoit, because of how it went out, we, the fan base, or anybody else, could never truly get that same sense of grieving and closure that we did with just about every single other passing in wrestling. That, I believe, is why you keep seeing things like Benoit should go in the Hall of Fame, even though he obviously can't for those reasons. It's because those are the types of fans who still want to say goodbye to a wrestler that, even though he did something horrendously monstrous, it's that duality. Like there's a part of you that still can see a match and say, "Hey, yeah, he was friggin' awesome."
I
So
to an extent I can agree on that, but I also kind of disagree with. I felt like the fans got their chances to basically grieve and say goodbye to Chris Benoit, the character. But once it came to with that Raw show before was that Chris Benoit tribute show before anything really happened. That was their before they found out the true details. That was their goodbye to Chris Benoit, the character. And then once we got the reveal on Chris Benoit, the man, and what he did, it took that grief, it took that goodbyes, and basically set it on fire, or just threw it in Vince McMahon's limousine and blew it up with the Vince McMahon character that they tried to kill off the week prior. I still
yeah,
remember that.
and
But
then again, because of that, because of everything that you just described, it's like you came close to shutting the book, and then, oops, here's this new information about what really happened. Boom, no sense of closure. And
it
just
makes you
watching
not
the
want to read the book
documentary,
ever again.
yeah, seemed like there was something that was just, it feels like, I'm not sure if either of you have been here, but it seems like if you after you lost a loved one and they just something horrible happened and you never got a funeral. Like, yeah, life goes on, but there's still a part about it that really, really hurts. And granted, there's no really sugarcoating anything that Benoit did, but because of how the way that this was handled after all this time, I personally got a sense of a, a sense of completeness and just about as much closure as you could possibly get given the circumstances with this, especially like we were talking about, once David and his aunt got reconnected. It felt like for them, for the ones who were most affected by this, it was sort of a light at the end of the tunnel that, yeah, life can begin again. You never forget the wounds of the past, but you can move on with the scars and life can continue on. It was about as hopeful as a of an ending as you can expect. And it seemed like it wasn't a happy ending per se, but it was satisfying. And I think, yeah, that's the word that comes to mind right now is just closure.
I will say, I guess I'll just really end it with this because there's nothing really more else that I can add. It's just now with the time that's gone by, now that I have two kids and I love them very much. And I felt now it's just reached the point just seeing now these new pictures of Daniel and Nancy with David,
Mm,
Daniel and Nancy. I guess it now sparked a new anger at it in with the parent in me.
understandable.
Just
Completely.
and as they were putting it, and there was even a moment where it could have that they explained that where it couldn't have like it could have been avoided with Chris trying to call Nancy was refusing to get in touch with Chris, so he tried to get in touch with her through his sister and she helped him with that and how that moment will have pretty much is a big factor on one of her biggest regrets, like if she didn't help him how things would have been different then. And it's just I guess that's just another fact I'd like another factor of course like of course I thought about Daniel back then, but now it's a new light on me
Mm,
being a parent and now it's actually building up a little more rage about it. So I'm glad that the people that are still here today are able to extent get that closure, but it also gave me new wounds
mm.
from different angles that I haven't really thought of before until now being older, a parent, and it just again, it's now like now also thinking about it again. It's I'm actually getting a little choked up just thinking about it.
Mm. And
And
I totally get it.
Yeah,
Well,
it's one of those things where okay, we've got the closure. Everyone that was closely involved in it is trying to move on now. It's like I don't need to hear any more about Benoit. I'm like,
yeah,
if this is the last thing we hear about Benoit, I'm perfectly fine with that. Just let this
as
be the last of it. Let this be the last of his legacy. We've done the full
as
we've done
Jeff
the
puts
full
it,
deep dive in.
we can now finally close that book.
yes,
Exactly.
Mm.
yes.
If
Now,
that's the best that comes out of this, then it did its job.
Mhm.
yes. And before we move on, I do have a quick scholar's quick talk for you. In a interview with the makers of the series after the Benoit episodes aired, it was revealed that one of the other episodes later on in the season would be on Owen Hart, and they did lock in a interview with Martha Hart.
Oh boy.
Y-
Here we go.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
that's gonna be
Yeah,
interesting.
There's the
my gut
must see
feel.
for me.
Yeah, my gut feeling is they're going to probably go for them, or because Martha Hart is just seemed like one of those figures that always seemed to spoil everybody's fun, stopping DVDs from coming out or just shutting down his entry, Owen's entry into the Hall of Fame, all that stuff. We've all heard the stories. Do you think this could possibly deliver the same level of closure and catharsis for the fan base, or do you think it's just not going to heal up any wounds? It's just going to be more of the same?
I honestly think that this is the only way you can close those wounds. Okay, if you actually get like a good interview out of Martha Hart, like not just fluff questions and all that, do all that. If you actually get the answers of why she's been doing the things she has been doing in the case of Owen Hart, like this could be huge. Just like it could be huge, it could be a massive disaster. This is one of those where it's like there's no in between. Okay, you either go one way or you go the complete opposite, and it all depends on Martha Hart. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Cool.
I feel like there really isn't anything more else to tell on the count of Owen's story. I feel like now this will just the documentary will be less about Owen and more about Martha.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be more about the aftermath of everything that went on.
Is this going to be a two-parter?
I do not believe so. I think that Benoit was the only two-parter of the season.
Okay, because I'm just really just trying to think, what more can be said on the count of Owen's part.
I think, Brian, I think you're right that it's going to be all about the aftermath and how everything was handled after the fact.
Because when it comes to Owen's part, it was pretty straightforward. It was a horrible accident, and yeah, there really isn't anything more that you can say. I mean, the guy was amazing. He was just doing something he absolutely loved, and it was a very creative idea and something that has been done in the past, I believe, like that particular stunt that he was going to do, flying it.
Yeah, Michaels did it.
Yeah. I was about to say, Mike. I was just having a brain fart. I'm like, was Michaels before that,
Yep.
But yeah, it was just nothing more than a simple accident. I guess the dark side of it is just the aftermath, and it's basically Martha Hart versus, well, I guess WWE in that content. Because really, that's pretty much what the whole. I think it just eventually really starts becoming WWE versus the Hart family in general.
We'll find out all about. Yeah, we'll find out all about it when that episode airs in the coming weeks, hopefully.
David's still training, right, to get into the ring?
He's at the end of the documentary said he made the claim that he would still want to, but he just doesn't know how to go about it. So that still remains to be seen how, when, and how that's going to work.
Because the WWE banned him for wearing an AEW shirt. You heard about that, right?
Yeah, I heard. But it didn't stop them from attending an AEW show after with his aunt. So hey, Jericho to the rescue once again, I guess.
Well, in that case, it looks like Renee Young might be in trouble having John Moxley show up at WWE backstage for a quick cameo.
Awesome. Yeah, how dare you walk around in your own house, John Moxley? Shame on you.
How dare you show up?
How dare you?
How dare you?
this of your dog.
How dare you pet your dog and love your wife? How
I'm sorry,
dare you?
that was so great. I watched that clip like over and over again. I just
Best
was
part-
on the floor laughing. I'm just like, this man is amazing.
But it's like the best part is the reactions of Booker T and Xavier Woods.
Oh, Xavier
That's
Woods was me.
part
I
of all.
we were like I was losing it just as much as he was.
Yeah.
I was on the floor laughing.
And Booker T's like, cameo!
Cameo.
I'm like
Uh,
that's how I don't think she'll actually get in trouble because everybody
yeah.
knows that it's like quarantine. It's like and you know John Moxley. Everybody in
Now,
that community knows John Moxley. You knew he was gonna shit like
now
that.
I want him just to be Jim Carrey from when he was doing the TV shows, just being the background guy, just like just doing crazy stuff in the background.
Speaking of
It's a
AEW,
Fox show. WWE can't do shit.
You have Booker T every week calling him out in the background.
No, it would be just amazing
boy.
to just keep going on with the show, and he's just in the background doing some crazy shit. You just see him, you just see Renee talking, and you just see John Moxley going in the background, just doing a bunch of random shit.
And you have Booker T and the guests trying not to laugh and bring attention to it. That's it.
And speaking of AEW, it couldn't be a week in wrestling without AEW shenanigans either. From Chris Jericho yelling at Vanguard One and totally cutting a promo on a drone to Brody Lee doing his very best Vince McMahon impression.
Brody Lee doesn't like it when you sneeze.
I honestly didn't get what he was going for until he did the whole sneezing thing. I was like, he's been ripping off Vince McMahon. Okay.
Now it's just the question on, is he just going to do like slight jabs at Vince McMahon every week? Or is this just like...
I certainly hope not.
I think that was it, because
so.
I know that in the Talk is Jericho episode, I listened to a little bit more than you guys probably did. But he did say,
well, yeah, you were on it.
He did say there's a legit plan, and
it's blowing you off.
Him, Evil Uno, and Stu Grayson are all hands on deck. It's just those three doing the plans for the Dark Order. So, and they're like, and Brody Lee was like that. He didn't say anything about the promo, but I think that's a one-time deal. He's getting all of his shit out, and then we're going to and then straight into the Dark Order noise, because it's like they've planned this all out.
Mm-hmm.
It's all planned out, so it's like Brody Lee got to have his fun for 1 week, and we can move on from here.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me look forward to the inevitable feud for the AEW championship between Brody Lee and John Moxley.
Oh boy,
that'll be fun.
Let them go back to the old days, not the WWE version, but when they were doing their CZW and all that noise. Go real Brody Lee versus Moxley. Wow.
That'll be some golden stuff.
But that's gotta be another few months. That can't be right away.
Yeah.
They definitely needs way more build after all that. Plus, they need to do Dark Order versus the rest of SCU and finish that out first.
That's the bit. I see that going to the pay-per-view whenever that, and then you can move on to whatever the next thing is. But so I still think you're getting a rematch at the next pay-per-view between Moxley and Jericho. Because now they're building up Moxley taking out the entire Inner Circle, which makes me think whenever they do, I actually think that when they do the Blood and Guts match, Hardy's gonna turn.
You think?
And the Inner Circle is gonna win, so that they can actually do the John Moxley, the champion, takes out the entire Inner Circle, because it's like if the Elite wins, then it's like the Inner Circle already got taken out. It's done. He got beat by the Elite. So what's John Moxley doing? So it's like, if they're already building this, then I think Circle needs to win the Blood and Guts match whenever that happens.
Most
Interesting.
likely.
Yeah, there's so many, because of the way that everything is spaced out in AEW. This can still develop in any manner of ways, and that to me that's what makes it so compelling. There's so many different ways you can go about it, so many different strong players as far as the title scene goes. I'm hooked. This one, I have to admit, this particular episode was a little tiny bit weak in my eyes, but other than that, it was still a very strong outing, and I'm still very much looking forward to see more.
As for Matt Hardy.
Oh, here it comes.
And is teleporting. Yes.
All right. I loved 3/4 of that segment. I did. But let's face it. Okay. Teleporting Matt Hardy did not look good. It was not well done. That was it looked cartoonish. It's the one thing I didn't need. But once he actually got in the ring and they started yelling at each other, they started cutting the back and forth promo. Of course, Jericho yelling at the drone was awesome. Okay, that's it.
There is seriously nothing that Jericho can't do. He really is the GOAT.
Him on social media yelling at the Roomba. That was great.
Oh, yeah,
now
yeah.
he's just got social media yelling at appliances. That's awesome. But when Matt Hardy actually got to talking, okay, the extra shit I don't need. But if you're just gonna have broken Matt Hardy and Chris Jericho going back and forth in the ring on microphones or just talking to each other or whatever you're doing there, that was great. That was awesome. The mystical shit I don't need. Especially if you're gonna make it look like that, because that you if they did it like I'm gonna compare to WWE. I will. If they could have done it like Fiend type of deal, or like the Undertaker when the lights go out and suddenly he's just standing in the ring right in front of you. Okay, that would have worked. That would have worked, but I don't need this teleporting 16 different places every 5 seconds. I don't need that. That wasn't what made Broken Matt work to me.
Yeah, it definitely was not the stronger of Matt Hardy's vignettes, I guess you could call it. But to me, I was able to write off the cheesiness as just being on brand. It's not his best, certainly not, but I'm convinced that, just because it's imperfect doesn't mean that Matt Hardy can't bounce back from this. Give him a week, he'll be right as rain.
The promo itself was great. Once they actually got into the ring and got into the meat and bones of what was going on, it was awesome. And all that. It was just, I don't need the mystical shit at the beginning.
Fair enough.
I just need more trash talking to drones. That's what I need.
I think we all need some of that in our life.
I can listen to Chris Jericho yell at home appliances and drones until the end of time.
Now the question is Jericho going to kill Vanguard?
You know what? If he's got AEW money, he might actually do it. So Matt Hardy can bring in Vanguard too. Who knows?
There's the question, yeah.
I think you have to at this point, right? You can't throw it out there. You can't start yelling at the drone and then not do anything.
Yeah, it's reached that point. Yeah, I think he has to just put that one, make it personal, kill a member of the Hardy family, and why have it be the drone? The drone is sacrificial.
Blood feud.
Or like, in this
Oh
case,
boy.
It'll
oil
be a
feud.
lot better than when he killed the trombone. That's
Oh boy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's good at killing appliances. Yeah.
Well, you've
That. Yeah, Francesca. Yeah.
you've heard it here first, kids. You've heard what we think about everything this week in the world of professional wrestling. So now is the time in the show where we turn it over to you, our wrestling viewing and discussion audience. We want to hear from you. What did you think of Dark Side of the Ring? What do you think of the latest developments leading up to WrestleMania? What is going on with AEW? We want to hear from you. So get us all over our socials in the comments section below on our Facebook. Drop us a line there, or, of course, join the conversation yourself over Twitter, starting with at ScholarsOW, our main account for all the latest episode uploads every single week. And you can also check us out on our personal Twitter accounts. You can reach me at I'm Robbie Rage. Fool, where can he reach you?
You can reach me forgetting to actually bring up that the Seth Rollins Kevin Owens promo on Raw was absolutely fantastic, and I actually am now looking forward to that match at the Avataric.
And Brian, where can he reach you?
You can reach me fake yelling at everything in the room at Atomic Beanpole.
Once again, thank you for joining us. And before we go, we'd also like to make a special announcement that since next week is going to be our WrestleMania prediction show, we are going to want you to join our predictions and make your predictions along with us. So we would like to officially announce for the first time ever, we are going to have a public scorecard, a prediction form, so you can play along with us starting at WrestleMania. It's the official Scholars of Wrestling prediction game. Look for it next week. We'll tell you more information about it, and we're all going to have a great old time because, hey, you know who we are. We are the Scholars of Wrestling, and you have just been schooled. You're welcome.
Welcome.
See you all next week for the WrestleMania prediction show. Bye-bye.
WrestleMania